Thanks very much, everyone, and I'd like to acknowledge too that we're on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and pay respects to their elders past and present. Well, what's this TPP? It means the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and it's meant to be a trade agreement that's being negotiated between Australia, the US and 10 other countries. The thing is, it's not really a partnership and it's not really just about trade. It's being negotiated in secret. There's been some public briefings and some leaked documents, but the briefings don't tell you the detail of the actual text, which is still secret. So what we know from leaked documents and from industry journals and publications, because in the US, industry is being briefed in much more detail about some of these proposals. And most of it is really bad news because it's about the negotiations, although they're between the US, Australia and 10 other countries, they're really being driven by the US on behalf of its major industries and corporations. And it's about them wanting to set the rules for not just trade, but the laws and policies which we will be able to have in the future in the Asia-Pacific region, which suit those industries. And I just want to talk about five really bad aspects of it to give you examples. The first one is they want the right for foreign investors, a single foreign investor, to be able to sue a government for damages if a law or policy harms their investment or they claim it harms their investment. Now, the example we have here in Australia is the Philip Morris company is currently trying to sue the Australian government over the tobacco plain packaging legislation. Now, that legislation was passed through our parliament with bipartisan support. The tobacco companies tried to seek compensation or damages in our High Court, and the High Court threw it out. They said it's a public health measure, you're not entitled to compensation. Now, the Philip Morris Tobacco Company, which is an American company, couldn't use this ability to sue under the US-Australia Free Trade Agreement because even the Howard Coalition government did not agree to have that in the US-Australia Free Trade Agreement in 2004. So what they did was they looked around the world and they found an obscure Australia-Hong Kong investment agreement from 20 years ago, which had this clause in it, and now they're saying we're a Hong Kong company. They shifted some investment there, and they're trying to use that provision in that Hong Kong agreement to sue the Australian government. Now, this is a direct challenge to our democracy, our legal system, because it's been through our parliament and through our High Court, but the Philip Morris Tobacco Company is still trying to claim hundreds of millions of damages from our government. Now, this is wrong and we must oppose it. The other relevant example of this is to do with coal seam gas regulation. Under the North American Free Trade Agreement, which has this ability for investors to sue, an American mining company is currently trying to sue the Canadian Quebec provincial government for regulating actually doing an environmental review of shale gas mining, which is similar to coal seam gas mining. Now, that's exactly the same review and legislation that just happened here in New South Wales under the New South Wales Conservative government. So 54 rural organisations, many of whom would be National Party supporters, have signed a letter to the Trade Minister saying, we don't want this ability for foreign investors to be able to sue governments over environmental regulation of coal seam gas because it could happen here. We don't want you to agree to this in the TPP. So we're trying to build a very broad coalition against that provision of the TPP. No to foreign investors being able to sue governments. The second really bad thing I want to talk about is about the price of medicines. Now, at the moment, if you invent a new medicine, if you're a big drug company, they're usually the ones that do it, you can have a monopoly over that medicine. It's called a patent for 20 years. Now, the big US drug companies want to extend those patents, make them longer for 20 years than 20 years. Now, that means that cheaper, generic versions of that medicine will be delayed, and we'll all pay higher prices for medicines for longer. They also want to make patent rights stronger and make it more difficult for people to challenge them. We ought to say no to all of that. That is just giving more money to pharmaceutical companies who are already amongst the most profitable in the world. The other thing they want to do with medicines is they want to interfere with our pharmaceutical benefit scheme. Now, our pharmaceutical benefit scheme means that the government actually does regulate the price of medicines. It regulates the wholesale price to make it lower, and then when we go to the chemist, it subsidises the retail price. So if you're working, you don't pay more than about $36 for a prescription medicine, and if you're a pensioner, you pay about $5.80. Now, they want to interfere with that scheme because they don't have it in the US. We have to say to our government, hands off the PBS, don't agree to anything in the TPP that will reduce your ability to regulate medicine prices through the PBS. The third thing that's under threat, believe it or not, is to do with copyright and the internet. Again, it's mainly big American companies that control the internet and control media content on the internet. At the moment, copyright, that is, that you have to pay royalties for using material, lasts for the lifetime of the author plus 70 years. Now, that's a long time. They want to make it even longer. And they also want to make criminal penalties for people who download copyrighted material from the internet, and they want the internet much more policed, including by internet service providers. So that's really an attack on people's freedom and ability to use the internet, and for schools, libraries and other public institutions that use information, they're just going to have to pay more to use copyrighted materials. So we ought to be saying no to that as well. There are a number of other regulatory issues that are affected by the TPP, and one of them is food labelling. There is an attempt, again, by the US agribusiness companies, including the companies that manufacture GE products, to limit the ways in which government can regulate food labelling. So, for instance, at the moment, in Australia, we do have some labelling of GE foods. We also have labelling of other foods for nutritional content, etc. Now, what they're trying to do is make one standard, and they want to limit the ways in which governments can require certain information on food labelling, and that would include GE food labelling. So we've got to say no to that. And the last area of regulation I want to talk about is in terms of local content in film and television. Now, the only reason we get to see Australian stories in film and television is because we have laws in Australia which say there should be a certain level of Australian content in children's television, drama, current affairs, etc. If we didn't have those laws, the commercial channels would find it much cheaper just to use content, all their content from the US or the UK or other English-speaking countries, because it's much cheaper to import content than it is to make local content. We've had those rules for a long time to preserve Australian culture. And of course, it's the US, the Hollywood and media companies who are saying that's a barrier to trade. You shouldn't have any local content rules because we want to have absolutely free sway to export all of our media content into your country. So again, we've got to say no to that. We've got to say there must be a cultural exception in all trade agreements that enables us to have local content. Now, all of those areas are expansions of corporate rights. Now, what the TPP was supposed to do was also supposed to have chapters to protect workers' rights and environmental standards. And of course, they're one of the biggest areas of disagreement. There's been no agreement reached yet in the negotiations that the workers' rights will be protected or the environment will be protected. So we ought to be saying to our government, it's not acceptable to have trade agreements that don't protect workers' rights and the environment. Now, I'm from the Australian Fair Trade and Investment Network. We've been campaigning against these sorts of proposals, this agenda in the TPP for 3 years. We have a website, it's aftinet, aftinet.org.au, and if you go to that website, on the very front page, there's our TPP campaign. You can send an email message to the Minister saying no to all this stuff. You can get more fact sheets and information. You can hold a local meeting, you can write to your local Member of Parliament, or you can write to the local newspaper. The campaign is hotting up. The next big international meeting where decisions are going to be made is going to be in Bali at the beginning of December. Tony Abbott says he wants to try and finish this agreement by the end of the year, and he's indicated that he's prepared to negotiate on these issues. The previous Labor government was saying no to investor rights to sue, no to changes on medicines, but Tony Abbott has said we are prepared to negotiate. So this leaflet is a summary of these issues I've just talked about. Peter's handing them out now, and as I said, you can go to our website and get more information. And the last thing I want to say is that just before that December meeting, we're going to be holding a rally on Friday the 29th of November at lunchtime in Martin Place, so I hope that all of you can come along to that to give a message just before that big meeting. We've also got a campaign that's being run by Choice, the consumer organisation, to stop the secrecy of these negotiations and release the text. There's a link on that to our website as well. There's a petition which has been signed by thousands of people, and thousands of people have sent a letter to the Trade Minister. So join us in this campaign, and I hope I'll see you on November the 29th in Martin Place. Thank you.
Is Senator Rhiannon, and she's coming up to the stage now, I think.
I do acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay tribute to their history, their culture and their ongoing contributions to our communities. And on behalf of the Greens, thanks to the organisers for the invitation to join you today. The Greens very much stand with the march against corruption. Corruption comes in many forms, and Sydney at the moment and New South Wales is seeing it in a very ugly, raw state with what's coming out at ICAC, with former minister after minister being exposed for some very dodgy behaviour, very illegal behaviour. But what today's rally reminds us of, that there's a corruption that is straight out illegal, where you get people in public office, people who should know better, actually breaking the law. But there's also the immoral corruption, and that brings us to this whole business about the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And I do pay credit to AFTINET. We've just heard from Pat detail the real horrors behind this partnership. And just let's pause on that word partnership. As she herself said, you know, it's not a partnership. That's part of that PR speak to make people think everything's okay, where in fact it's a dirty deal for corporate interests. As one person described it to me, it's a wish list for the 1%. That's the problem that we have here, where it would be about giving unprecedented power to corporate interests over consumers, farmers, unions, workers, active workers, workers on the job just trying to get their living together. It would really be an enormous setback in terms of our environment, labour standards, in terms of the quality of food, the information you as a consumer could get when you went shopping. And this is why. Let's remember, this unprecedented corporate power, this push to tie up such an agreement, is about maximising profits. Because if you drive down standards, labour standards, environment standards, providing information to consumers, in terms of what farmers can grow, it means that you're removing regulations. You're running down standards or removing them outright. And that makes it easier to maximise profits. That's what this is about at the end of the day. And as Pat said, there were supposed to be standards in there about workers. But as usual, that's been left out, that's been forgotten. So when you come to corruption, if it's straight out illegal or immoral, that there's not laws against, or they've actually got through dodgy laws like such agreements, what do? What's really critical here is public scrutiny. And that's where we need to open up these agreements so people know what is going on. And that comes back again to the TPP, why it's been conducted in such secrecy. Verging on probably unprecedented secrecy, really quite extraordinary. Now my colleague, Senator Peter Whish-Wilson, has responsibility for this for the Greens. And when Parliament resumes in about 10 days' time, one of the first things the Greens will be doing will be putting a motion to the Senate for the release of the text of the agreement, for the release of much information as possible. That we say should already be in the public domain. But we've got to fight for it. We will use our power in the Senate to endeavour to do that. And that's where we need to keep the pressure on Labor to come on board and support that motion. And also the Nationals. Now you'll often hear, and it's true, the Nationals are torn about this. But what I see time and time again in the Senate, when we vote on issues, the Nationals might talk big about their concerns about CSG. They might talk big about their concerns about regional universities. And they might talk big about the damage that some free trade agreements can do and foreign investments can do in Australia. But when it comes to voting, they are there solidly with the Liberals. Now that doesn't mean that we don't keep pressure on them. We do. That's very vital in this campaign. But I did want to point that out because time and time again, the Nationals get away with it, walking both sides of the road. Out there in the community, fighting the good fight that they're against free trade or against agreements that do it tough for the farmers, but they don't do anything in Parliament. But at the moment, we do have a window of opportunity. Right now, Labor and the Greens have the numbers together. Even if the Nationals don't come on board, if Labor votes with the Greens for our motion, we can start opening up the window on this TPP. And that's what is very critical. We can see it's getting tough to get the word out because there's so little information. That's part of the dodginess, part of the corruption that is going on here. We need to get information, get into the detail about that TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, to help inform Australians how if you're a farmer, you're on the job at the Illawarra, if you're on the job in Western Sydney, if you're somebody working, doing internet work, working in video or TV, everybody's going to be affected. If you're sick, healthy or whatever, this is coming after you. We need to build a strong movement. Getting the information out will be critical. We can do it. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Lee. Our next speaker is Peter Boyle from the Socialist Alliance. He's just going to step up here now.
I want to acknowledge that we're meeting here today on Gadigal land, on land that was never ceded, land that was stolen from the Aboriginal people of this land. The other day, a few of us were down outside the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Angel Place. It's called Angel Place, but they were doing the work of the devil, the work of the corporate devil. That's what was happening over there. It was supposed to be a public consultation about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. A public consultation. Most people walking around, we were handing out leaflets, were saying, trans what? This was your public consultation. It was happening 90 minutes. It's gone. And most people don't even know about it. What sort of public consultation is this? And to make matters worse, some of the people, some journalists who tried to get into this meeting, and it was called a stakeholders briefing. A stakeholders. It's very funny actually. They get to pick who the stakeholders are to give the invitations out and get to say who can't come and listen to what the stakeholders are talking about. Aren't we all the stakeholders? From Pat's speech earlier, the first speech today, she's outlined how we are all stakeholders. It's going to affect our pharmaceutical benefits, subsidy access. It's going to affect whether or not we have a chance to stop the coal seam gas monster that is rolling across the state. It's going to affect us in our access to media. It is going to affect us in the price we pay for our medicines, and in a whole range of things is going to affect us. Aren't we stakeholders? And yet, they had the temerity to reply to one of these journalists, no, this has to be an off-the-record discussion of the stakeholders and us. What is it that they have to hide, that they have such secret public consultations, is the question we ask. And I think we do know the beginnings of an answer to this question from the leaked bits of the text that's been negotiated in this horrible treaty. It is wrong. A couple of months ago, a noted author, Susan George, came to this country. And she gave us a fairly clear account of what's been happening. She said that powerful lobby groups of the big corporations have been busily working away on treaties like this. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is just one of them. There's another one for the Atlantic. They want to create these treaties which restrict the rights of governments to in any way respond to what is growing pressure from the people against this unbelievable freedom to exploit by the big corporations. That's what the game is. And they've been working on these partnerships for a long, long time, and we are now seeing them rolled out. Now we've got, public consultation of this nature, and the Abbott government says it's going to be finalised by the end of the year. It's a big, big problem. I think there's a good side to this story and a bad side. Now let me tell you about the good side. The good side is that they are carrying out this process in such utter secrecy because they know that their agenda is unpopular. They know that the people don't want what they are trying to force down our throats. And that's why they keep it in secret. That's the good side of the story. The bad side of the story is we've got hardly any time to mount a popular resistance to this TPP. If they're really going to wrap it up by the end of the year, we have got to go from the point when people are saying trans what, to coming out the streets in larger numbers to fight against it. We've got to do something about it, and I pledge on behalf of my organisation on Green Left Weekly, the newspaper, to do all we can to get this out. I want to end on this last thing. Halloween took place a few days ago, and you saw a few zombies walking around. I think zombies actually captures what we are talking about, what we are dealing with today. What we have here is zombie capitalism. It's zombie capitalism in so many ways. First of all, this incredible concentration of wealth and power in the hands of these few corporations. They are the results. They are the results of hundreds of years of dispossession that began with the Aboriginal people in this country and the Aboriginal people of all the continents, that began with the dispossession of communities and peoples away from the means to grow their own food, to produce their own livelihoods. It is built, this power and wealth is built upon the generations and generations of slaves and workers whose sweat has been exploited by the few to make them so rich. In a bizarre way, it's the dead. It's the exploited of the dead now marching to dictate upon us the agenda for the future and dictate upon governments, even if we should be so lucky as to have a government that acts according to what the people want. They are trying to constrain it with a series of treaties and laws that says, no, you can't. And finally, it's dead in another way. Because what they are trying to push down our throats, this agenda, is so crazy. It is not only against the interests of the ordinary people, our common interest is also at stake. The very habitability of our planet is at stake because of corporate greed. And in this full sense, I think the idea of zombie capitalism really comes true. The desire to accumulate more profits and to accumulate, no matter what the cost, not only to the poor, to the exploited, but to everybody, is indeed the sort of hand of the dead reaching out into the present and into the future. So I say, stop the TPP, power to the people.
Thank you, Peter. Our next speaker is Collen Fuller, and she's here to address us on corruption within the Docs Department. She's from the CAP, which is Children and Parents Support Group. So here she is.
First of all, I'd like to welcome the people here. I am a proud Yuin woman from the South Coast. I acknowledge my ancestors, also the Eora and the Gadigal people who are the traditional owners of this land. I'm here today to talk about the corruption within the Department of Children's Services Australia-wide. Since the Woods inquiry, the problem with this department has gone from bad to worse. They may have changed their name, but this has done little to stop the damage that is inflicted upon the state's most vulnerable, our children. Frew promised to return children who had been wrongfully removed when she came into power. Frew also promised to implement the changes to legislation that NSGB, the New Stolen Generation by Docs, had campaigned for. Members of New Stolen Generation by Docs were victimised for their role in advocating on behalf of the efforts families and children. Many of these members endured mental and emotional breakdowns due to the level of bullying by the department. CAP, Children's and Parents Support Group, is a group that has formed as a result of many of these members realigning their alliance and support of one another. CAP is an on-the-ground networking group that supports families and children caught within this corruption. CAP supports and advocates on behalf of families Australia-wide. Many families naively go to the department seeking help and assistance. Their needs vary, but their need is the same. They need help. This cry for help is often turned on them and used against them so as to incapacitate and suspend them in a position of weakness. The department recognises this plea for help as self-reporting. The individuals within these families then endure mental anguish and torment that words cannot describe. Re-victimisation and legal abuse of the victims is common practice for the department. This treatment justifies the department's reason for removal as it suspends the victims in a defeated mindset. The department can say and do whatever it wants and is accountable to nobody. The guidelines in place for community services are not adhered to by the department. Additionally, community services that are working in the lives of the families and are often treated with contempt, and their recommendations are ignored by the department. In recent times, the media has been promoting the department's need for more carers. The truth is, this need is more sinister than the public has been made aware of. The department justifies its existence by the number of children in foster care. Therefore, the department seeks to divide and dismantle a family unit of child with child's best interest rarely being taken into account. The department often lies, fabricates evidence, and defames extended family members in order to ensure their quota, and I say quota, of children in care is met. The non-transparency of the department has left a wide berth for corrupt carers known as rakers and stackers to care for multitudes of children. Not one, not two, but up to 10 children in foster care in one home. Especially with high needs children with disabilities. Rakers and stackers is a term used to describe the intake of children for the wrong reasons and it is described by general foster carers. The foster carers call these people rakers and stackers. Children with high needs disabilities are worth a minimum, now listen to this, a minimum of $1,500 per fortnight above what a normal person would get as a carer's allowance and pension. They get that in addition to, a minimum of. This is tax-free benefits for them. This amount is, as I said, is in addition to the normal carer's payments. Parents are considered guilty and must prove themselves to be innocent. A minor number of parents whose children are removed by the department have been criminally charged. In fact, only 3% of those people who have been criminally charged are convicted of a criminal offence. The complaints line and intakes process does not follow a structured format, nor are caseworkers trained in criminal investigation. A call to the department alleging child abuse should be referred to the police for investigation to determine whether a crime of child abuse has been committed. The intake process instead involves a caseworker going into the home and making a subjective judgment about what has taken place. This gives room for the caseworker to fabricate evidence to apply for the removal of a child without evidence to do so. The parent is then assumed guilty until they can prove their innocence. This task is near impossible, as the Children's Court is not a criminal court. The Evidence Act does not apply in a children's court. This gives room for the department to steal children without the need to justify child removal tactics. The court cases are rarely heard in the first instance, the case being drawn out as much as possible so as to maximise the wedge between children and parents, and to ensure the parent is traumatised and thereby less likely to present as a competent, sane parent. At this stage, the court clinician often rules in favour of the department as they are presented with an emotionally distraught parent. These drawn-out cases are worth big bucks to the department and legal profession. An example of the monetary value in these cases is a care proceeding of a mother and grandmother. The Crown barrister, whose services were utilised for over 2 days, only 2 days, was awarded $66,000 that mother and grandmother had to drag out of where? All for fighting for their child. And that has gone straight into the coffers of the legal profession. The outcome of that case is still not resolved, but the money has been awarded. In the case of a victim of domestic violence, the mother applied for victims of compensation. The mother was not informed about the lawyer receiving the money, and the $10,000 went straight into the lawyer's pocket. The case is still yet to be heard in entirety. The department takes no responsibility for their abuse that often occurs in foster placement. They have been known to lie, cover up evidence, and to fabricate investigations. As the department fails to service the needs of the children in their care, these children often develop emotional and mental issues. Many of these children end up on prescription drugs so as to minimise the traumatised symptoms. A major issue of concern is what happens that have been traumatised throughout the duration of their time in care. These children endure a traumatic childhood without any resolution of the services during their formative years. They are then often to fend for themselves, often ending up on the streets or committing suicide. The department often dumps these cases so as to boycott any responsibility. They are not required to give an account for the devastation of these children's lives. The department recognises its system as having a superior form of parenting. However, in reality, individuals who are raised in care of the department are automatically flagged when they have their own children. The department lists their time in care as a risk factor and uses this fact against them to automatically remove a child at birth. These are children that are brought up by the so-called perfect parent system. Whilst we have highlighted areas that need to be investigated within the department, we also do recognise the need for child protection agencies, as well as too often hear the media of children who die as a result of abuse and neglect. In many of these cases, the family was known to the department. Why weren't they taken? CAP is calling upon the federal government to conduct a full and detailed public inquiry by way of Royal Commission. We demand a thorough investigation into the forced removal of children from innocent parents by state and territory authorities be conducted. In addition, the forced adoption removal of these children must be outlawed and revoked. Children are our future. Their right to a natural family should not be withheld, nor should they be alienated from their extended families. Now, in closing, this is something I find very necessary to speak about. Last night I received a phone call from a very distraught family. This case is unfolding as we speak. Woy Court will hold a hearing on Monday morning in regards to a child being removed by the department. Late Friday afternoon, the department contacted the mother of the child and informed her to pack the bags of the child, as they would be taking the child as soon as the court had finished. This court on Monday morning is the first court hearing of this case. The department has no regards for the legal profession and views their process of protocol and supreme above the decisions of the court. In other words, if the judge decides that child is to stay with those parents, the department doesn't care. They're still going to take that child, even though they've been proven innocent. Can we stand for this any longer? We cannot stand to allow another child to be taken by this corrupt, lawless department. We have victims' impact statements and a petition to be signed. We want to take it to Parliament House in Canberra. We need 10,000 signatures on the petition. Please, everyone that is here today, sign that petition. We need to stop this corrupt department.
Our next speaker is Simon Frew, President of the Pirate Party. And could you welcome to the platform here?
Okay, thank you. Pirate Party Australia have been involved in the campaign against the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement since the first information was leaked in 2011. We've attended briefings, we took part in the community consultation down in Melbourne, in the Melbourne round of negotiations. We've even had direct briefings of the Department of Foreign Affairs. With all these direct contact with the negotiators, we still have no idea what is in this agreement. The secrecy surrounding the negotiations is the most serious problem with the entire process. The only groups with access to the draft agreement beyond each country's negotiating teams are a handful of US-based multinationals who have helped draft the text themselves. From this, it is quite clear who is going to benefit from the agreement, a handful of US-based multinationals. The internet provides people with, around the world with unprecedented access to communication systems, yet treaty negotiations are given even more secrecy, and this is just not good enough. Secret negotiations are being used by the US trade reps as a means to force corporate rule upon many countries, including the US. The laws, including trade agreements, go beyond what is acceptable in any democratic society. And this is why they kept secret, because they knew that with any publicity, they'd just be roundly rejected by the populations that will be affected by them. Some of the most vocal opponents have been representatives of the US Congress because they know what it will mean for their own country. This is why the Obama administration is pushing for a fast-track law so the president can sign in any law that is required to meet the agreement without any oversight from the US Congress because they might reject it. What we know about the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement is as a result of leaks. The intellectual property chapter and investment chapters have both been leaked, and they make for very unpleasant reading. As discussed previously, there's a plan to strengthen and lengthen patent standards, putting at risk generic medicines. Medicines Sans Frontières note that a free trade agreement between the US and Jordan saw the cost of medicine rise by 20% in Jordan, with no increase in access to medicine. When this kind of cost is placed on developing countries, it will further limit their people's access to medicine and result to the loss of thousands of lives. It includes clauses that may enforce seizure of generic medicines in transit countries, so medicines sent between two non-participating countries could have their medicine seized as it pulls into a port of a signatory of the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. So this doesn't affect just the signatory countries. This could affect people from any country who has a ship unlucky enough to go to one of the signatory countries. The Investor State Dispute Tribunals, known as ISDS, is set to provide multinationals the right to sue signatory governments for laws that harm their profits. This is the beginning of a corporate feudalism, where corporations are placed above nation states and can impose their will or demand compensation. This puts at risk workplace safety reforms, environmental legislation, health legislation. Many of the basic functions of government will have to act in the interest of global corporations when they consider changes to law, regardless of the interests of citizens or the environment. The Australian negotiators have constantly said they will push back against anything that affects the Australian PBS system. But this is being broken down by the Abbott government, who have said everything's on the table when they go to negotiate to finish the agreement by the end of the year. The leaked copyright provisions are a rehashing of the failed anti-counterfeiting trade agreement, which is more commonly known as ACTA. ACTA was, as far as I know, the first treaty to be rejected by the Australian Joint Standing Committee of Treaties. It was completely rejected in the EU and seems to have died a very quiet death. ACTA failed precisely because it was negotiated behind closed doors. It failed precisely because it was set to benefit a few companies in the US and was fundamentally going to harm the people in all the signatory countries. The TPP, which has been referred to as the son of ACTA, is replicating all of those mistakes in the hope of reincorporating the terms of ACTA into a broader treaty, so it'll be harder to reject. Just last night we saw more information come out about the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. They want to remove data protection laws. So basically what this means is that privacy is treated as a barrier to trade, and our information will be able to be sold to the highest bidder under the agreement. Negotiating treaties in secret is no longer acceptable. Negotiating treaties without public access to the draft text is no longer acceptable. Negotiating treaties without input from all of those affected is no longer acceptable. Thank you all for coming out and showing your opposition to this undemocratic agreement.
Thank you, Simon. Now, I hope you all heard what he had to say there, because it's going to affect all of our lives if the TPP goes through. This is really dangerous stuff. You'll no longer have internet privacy. You will no longer have pharmaceutical benefits scheme. You will no longer have all the things that we're used to living with in our so-called fair society. But it'll become really, really unfair if the TPP goes through. So give us a big round of applause for Simon there. Thank you. Now, our next speaker is MelindaWilson from Western Sydney Stop CSG. This is a massive issue dealing with corruption and so on, and if she can come to here, she is here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi everyone. I just wanted to speak about coal seam gas and the damage it's going to cause. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is not really about trade at all. It's about making reforms that obstruct our economic, social and environmental policy options in the future. France, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, the Czech Republic, Bulgaria, Northern Ireland and parts of Germany and Switzerland are leading the way in banning coal seam gas fracking due to the dangers it presents to air, water, health and environment. The Trans-Pacific Partnership would prevent countries who signed the agreement from stopping coal seam gas mining in any area. The Trans-Pacific Partnership works on the investor-state system. This system gives individual foreign corporations equal status with the government signing the agreement. Under these new rules, mining corporations can ignore local laws and courts and instead launch legal cases against the government as an investor-state tribunal would claim the government trying to protect health and environment was having the indirect effect of lowering profits. Under this system, coal seam gas mining companies would have the right to not have expectations frustrated by changes in government policy, such as the recent 2K buffer zone protection of residential areas. This tribunal would demand unlimited amounts of compensation paid by the taxpayer to compensate the coal seam gas mining company. Governments around the world have already paid over $3 billion to foreign corporations in these kinds of disputes. A legal case was recently filed by Lone Pine Resources against Quebec's moratorium on fracking. Most would think the Quebec government had a right to protect its people and the environment from fracking, but under the investor-state system, they don't. Instead, Lone Pine Resources has the right to demand $250 million in compensation for Quebec's fracking moratorium. Lone Pine Resources says it violates their right to frack and inhibits their expected future profits, which that's just ridiculous. Another example of this is Chevron. They release gallons of toxic mining waste into the Amazonian streams and rivers, which are used by locals for their drinking water. An Ecuadorian court ordered Chevron to pay $18 billion for an environmental cleanup. Chevron, as a last chance to evade justice, turned to the investor-state tribunal. That tribunal ordered Ecuador's government to stop enforcement of the ruling. Sometimes the mere threat of an investor-state loss can pressure governments to weaken environmental and health policies. These types of pressure tactics are also used to avoid paying for environmental damages that are caused. No government should have to pay a corporation to protect their citizens from coal seam gas. The Trans-Pacific Partnership will also see an increase in coal seam gas mining by creating incentives for more fracking. Our government could lose its authority to regulate exports of coal seam gas to countries that have signed this agreement. The surge in exports would increase gas and electricity prices for us, the consumer. I think that we all need to do something. We all need to contact our MP today. We need to ring them. We need to demand that this investor-state dispute settlement be excluded from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Global communities must have the right to protect the community's health, drinking water and the environment from destructive coal seam gas projects. Thank you.
That's right. What Melinda was talking about is an issue that we all have to get behind, especially as there's plans afoot to have coal seam gas in our water catchment areas. So please, write any letters you like to the Premier and we'll get this fixed. Anyway, look, I know it's been long. We've had a lot of speakers here. We've got one more. He's just going to do the rallying cry for the march and so on, and that's Lance from Occupy. But before he comes up, I would like to refer you guys, everybody, to the cleverest, most politically aware comedian in town. That's Shane Hunter, and he is performing at the Black Rose. Now, I suppose you know where the Black Rose is. If you don't, that's in Newtown, the top of Enmore Street, just near the station. 5 p.m. Saturdays. Get down there. There's lots of great comics. Not only are they really funny, but they are politically aware and really take the piss out of everything. So get down there. Anyway, put your hands together for Lance from Occupy, please.
Yeah. Just before I speak, Mark's got a couple of quick announcements he wants to make.
Just 1 minute. This TPP is all about shifting the global power even more towards corporations. I'm involved and have been for 13 years in the refugee rights campaign, and people know these massive corporations involved in private prisons and detention centres around the world, most notably Serco, Transfield, GS4 and all the rest of it, who operate in secrecy and are making squillions of dollars out of the misery and trauma of some of the most vulnerable people in the world. So I just wanted to announce, we know that there's a war on asylum seekers renewed again by Scott Morrison and Tony Abbott. On Monday the 18th of November, buses are going from Melbourne, from Sydney, to the Federal Parliament, leaving Sydney at Central Eddie Avenue at 7:30 in the morning to return later that afternoon. There'll be rallies at ASIO against lifetime detention at Parliament House and also at the Papua New Guinea High Commission about the New Pacific Solution. So come see me if you're interested in getting a ticket on that bus, or if you want to get involved in that, you know, another campaign both against state power and corporate power. Thanks.
Yeah. Look around you, people. How many people are here? Is that all the people that know about the TPP? What does your government not want you to know? Does your government not want you to know what they're selling out of your and your children's rights? You've had some of the most informed people today tell you what that government is taking away. But that's only what they know from leaks, because the government won't discuss it with them. They don't mind going and discussing it with Monsanto. They don't mind going and discussing it with Serco. They don't mind going and discussing it with Kellogg's. But they weren't voted in by Kellogg's. They were voted in by you. It is their responsibility to inform you and to do as you wish, not as they wish. And if they won't take that responsibility, it's your job to take it from them by whatever means necessary. People, we're here too about corruption. And I think we need to redefine the word corruption. What Collen was talking about is actually quite legal for them to do. We need to ask the question, does that make it right? There are a lot of other things that the government is quietly doing. There are the anti-graffiti laws. When you want your government to be arresting white-collar criminals who rob you for millions and banksters who rip you off, Barry O'Farrell goes after graffiti. Is that what you want for government? Is that what you want from your leaders? At state level, we have the anti-bikie laws. The anti-bikie laws don't just apply to bikies, although that's what's being marketed to you. They apply to every group of 3 or more people. And in New South Wales, only one of those people has to be in New South Wales. So they can apply to whoever the police commissioner likes. These laws that are being passed against the people are an erosion of your rights. And if you don't stand against them, you make your children and your grandchildren's future doubly as hard. Now, rights come in one box, and they exist about the same size. So when they're taking those rights away from you, who are they giving them to? And the answer is themselves and the corporations who will benefit from the TPP. So we must make the links to break the chains. It's one struggle, the 99% against the 1%. And if government join the 1%, what do you do? I'll leave that question up to you. Guys, we're going to march. Now, owing to our numbers, I think we march on the footpath. So what we're going to do, we're going to cross across. The banner's going to go on the outside of us. We're going to go inside. The police know the route. Just follow the banner. And we'll see you all at Martin Place. Once again, those of you that came, thank you for coming. Those of you that click like on Facebook, liking on Facebook is not activism.
Fair trade, yes. Free trade, no. TPP has got to go. TPP has got to go. TPP has got to go. Fair trade, yes. Free trade, no. TPP has got to go. Fair trade, yes. Free trade, no. The TPP has got to go. Fair trade, yes. Free trade, no. The TPP has got to go. Free trade, no.
She has done everything they've asked for. I have supported, advocated by myself because I didn't know CAPS was around. On Friday, they called her and said, pack his bags, he's going on Monday. She's done everything they've asked for. It's heartbreaking. I had to have a phone call again of her crying hysterically saying, they're taking my son again. It's not fair. It is not fair, and I just want to thank Collen so much for bringing it to light, and the support that I've had from these people just since the Wyong rally has been absolutely incredible. Thank you for coming.
What's just been said here is the fact that there is no on-the-ground support or advocacy for any family or even the children that are left in limbo once they leave DOC's care. That's correct. It is a deliberate act of corruption. Our group is only a newly formed group because other groups have been closed down by the department. They allege false allegations about the groups, and these groups closed down. We're specifically for supporting and advocacy of the parents. We are also for bringing about change with the department. The only way it can be done is if every person realises that what you have been brainwashed with is not true. The children that need protecting are left to the hands of the abusers. They are also abused and are dying in DOC's care. because these carers are not the perfect parents either. We need total change. We need to be able to have support and services. The S in facts, yaks, docs, CPS, the S stands for services. Services to help families and children, not destroy, tear apart. It's time, everyone. I don't care from what walk of life you are. I don't care if you're a lefty or a greenie. This is about children, the future, our future. We cannot allow their lives or their family lives to be destroyed any longer by a corrupt department. Thank you.
You know, I just got to emphasise, there's 47,000 kids under state child abduction just in New South Wales. Now, I refuse to believe that there are 94,000 bad parents. That's all I've got to say about it at the moment. Hey, just if you look over here behind you, that's Occupy. That's what's left of Occupy. Because since the 3rd of June, the council have raided us 26 times. They've now got 21 cubic metres of our property in storage in the council yard. We can't use it again because it's contaminated. It's contaminated because they take it away in rubbish trucks. And they told me that that's normal practice for them. That's what they do with the homeless guys' gear, and they give it back to them. And I looked incredulously and I said, do you tell them about the health risks of their blankets and that being on rubbish trucks? And do you know what? I genuinely think the council hadn't thought about that. Now, they've smashed us here 26 times since July the 3rd. Nobody has been charged once. No traffic tickets issued. And I think we need to be asking the question, what laws are they acting under? Or are they that scared to lay charges? Are they that sure that the courts will throw them out? Anyhow, as usual, Occupy are rebuilding. We're rebuilding a little more slowly this time, but they will be really pissed when they see what we rebuild. Watch this page. Anyone else?
I gotta go. Sorry. Yes, my name is Laurie Higgins. Recently, my 18-year-old son just aged out of the system. He's 6th generation in care, going back to the 1860s, 1870s. That my family have been 6th generation in care. I will not have another generation of my family be taken by docs. I support children and parents, support them wholeheartedly, and this has been going on since year dot. From 1920 to the 1990s, the Child Welfare Department operated institutions in Australia. 2 families in every street lost their kid to care into homes and orphanages. And now we've got a new generation of lost or stolen generation, and we all know about the stolen generation of the past, the former child migrants. Now we have a new generation combining all those 3 in a new child trafficking happening in here in this state and throughout Australia. It has to stop. We've had enough, and hopefully before this next New South Wales election we'll put an end to this child trafficking in this state.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Shane. I just wanted to give some words as to how information about these issues can be distributed. Everyone here probably has access to a personal computer or a printer, or has friends that has that kind of access. Realistically, we should all be using our printers to print off 100 flyers each. Maybe there's 100 people here today. That's 10,000 flyers, which we could have been handing out as we were doing the protest. That kind of stuff would radically help the movement grow. People simply don't understand what's at stake with things like the TPP. You know, there's people who might identify with the right wing of politics that would be deeply offended at what the TPP is doing to Australian national sovereignty. Just as they would be devastated to see people burning the Australian flag in public, little do they know that the TPP is doing that behind closed doors. I think that when outside of protesting, it's up to all of us to get the word out for these kinds of issues. A simple and effective way of doing that is chalking. Maybe you catch a bus on the way to work. It makes sense to chalk. Google the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Understand what's at stake. You know, that could be seen by perhaps 100 people or 1,000 people, and that costs less than 2 cents to do, and it makes sense. That's the kind of stuff we need to do if we want to see more people come out to these kinds of protests. Thank you very much. Any other speakers? Clark's going to come up and read an editorial on the TPP.
Cheers. Yeah, so this was published today. This was published today. Whoa, hard to speak in the mic and hold a piece of paper. I'll get my grip right. Yeah, thanks, man. I should have like some musical stand here. Australia's new Trade Minister, Andrew Robb, right up to the mouth, yeah. Australia's new Trade Minister, Andrew Robb, has a good pedigree in trade policy. He cut his teeth at the National Farmers Federation, pushing Australia to unilaterally liberalise and especially our high protectionist manufacturing measures, so this agriculture and the rest of the economy could prosper. As the Institute of Public Affairs, Tim Wilson, said succinctly in the Australian Financial Review, Australia should again embrace unilateral reforms and rid ourselves of irrational investments and thresholds, anti-dumping regimes, car subsidies, labour practices, and barriers on parallel imports. The Productivity Commission and others have said that most economic gains from trade liberalisation come unilaterally, followed a distant second by what is negotiated multilaterally, with bilateral or preferential trade agreements a poor last. By the way, this was written by 3 economists of ANU. Although a trade minister cannot revive unilateralism alone, he can help rally his government to do that cause. Now I'm going to skip a few paragraphs. To make matters worse, PTAs are typically tainted by non-trade issues. This makes them World Trade Organization inconsistent. Calling them WTO plus agreements, as most governments do, is a ruse. Skip again. The present obsession globally with PTA negotiations is economic nonsense. Why put domestic economic policy instruments, I'm going to repeat, why put important domestic economic policy instruments, including trade policy, on the table as a negotiating fodder to be traded away internationally on a discriminatory basis? Responsibility for such measures should not be surrendered for trade negotiators to haggle over. Skip again. As the Financial Review, Allan Mitchell observes, when the Americans demanded stronger protection for their intellectual property, our government caved in without checking if it was in Australia's natural interest. It was almost certainly not. The USTFA, signed in 2005, has overgenerously termed for US-based intellectual property. Skip to the end. Many hope Rob will be able to draw upon his past experiences to revive unilateralism as Australia's main trade policy. Ending Australia's love affair with PTAs is the key, something previous trade ministers have failed to do so despite public statements to the contrary. Now, I would just say that personally, I think sending a letter, talking to Rob, whatever you can do to talk to Rob, who's obviously the man on the inside in this sort of circumstance, would be beneficial. Thank you for your time.
Any other speakers? Yep.
All right, yeah, so I'm from the country that's trying to fuck your country right now. Sorry about that, by the way. Yeah, so another thing I didn't hear anybody mention was what was it called again? The liberalization of capital flows between TPP signatories. Now, the barriers against capital flows from countries, mostly the United States, was part of what cushioned the Australian, amongst other economies, from the global financial crisis in 2008. So if this happens, as the United States seems to think they can get away with happening, your country could be completely fucked next time we have another 2008. And the next time we have another 2008 is going to be a lot worse than this last one. As we all know, with this recent, this too big to fail thing has become completely institutionalized. It's in our country's laws now. Before, it was an idea. Now, it is literally in our country's laws, you know? So, no. You guys are fucked if you sign this thing. Thank you. Good night. Who's on next? Anybody? Maybe before we go, you might remember the revolutions in the Middle East recently, and also, those were against dictatorships. But it's also been happening over the past decade or so, as the United States has been completely kicked out of Latin America. You may have heard of Hugo Chavez, Nicolas Maduro, Rafael Correa. I mean, these people definitely have problems, but I mean, at least they aren't being imperialized by the United States anymore, right? Now, you guys have a democratic system. Your country, I mean, compared to my country at least, tends to have a semblance of, its government has a semblance of listening to its people, right? I mean, you guys could pull this off. So if I can do it already, all right? Yeah. Yep.
Thanks, dude. You obviously haven't been in Australia long enough. But hey guys, I'm just picking up on the comment that your government listens to you. Well, does it? When he said that, look, I scratched my head and I'm just trying to wonder when they last listened to you. Maybe it was the Melbourne Cup in 1976 when you told them who was going to win. Because I can't think of any substantive issue that any government in Australia has taken the side of the people on. Not for a long time. And, you vote these people in, or some of you do, and, who are they actually representing? That's the core question. They only want to know you for the 3 weeks in the lead up to the elections. They want you to think that they're, that they're the bee's knees. But where are they now? Where are they talking to you now? You had people from the minor parties. You had people from Socialist Alliance. You had people from the Greens. You had people from the Pirate Party address us earlier on, and what they're saying seems to be more on side with the people than the government. And I think the people need to take some responsibility for that. I think they need to stop listening to Rupert Murdoch. They need to stop taking the mainstream media's message as the truth. They need to look, and when they see something in the media, or when you hear me telling you something, don't just believe it. Go out and research it, and it's only by research that you establish what the actual truth is. And as far as your government goes, there is no truth except the truth of the corporations, and there hasn't been for a long time. If you look at your retail food supply, monopolised. Well, they don't allow monopolies in Australia, do they? No, but they certainly allow duopoly. And you've got Coles and Woolworths that have a stranglehold on 80% of the food in Australia now. They rip the farmers off, they rip the transport industry off, and we're supposed to say that's okay. We're talking about corruption today, and I'm wondering whether those need to be outed as signposts of corruption. Who are they paying off to get that position? Who are they, what are they doing with developments? Why can't anyone else get development sites to build supermarkets? And if you Google Woolworths in Manly, you'll do a good search of the property disputes that these guys in Coles triggered over there in order to maintain a duopoly. This is a huge problem, and everyone just says, well, what can we do about it? And there are other huge problems. We've got the huge problem of CSG, we've got mountaintop removal, we've got open pit mining, we've got coal dust, we've got kids being stolen, and people throw their hands up in the air and say, what can we do? Well,
I've got an answer.
There's a wall, there's an ice wall between us and where we want to be, and we don't know how thick it is. And it's our duty to pick up an ice pick and start chipping away, because one of us might get through one day, and when we get through, that's the vortex. Everyone else will follow you. So don't wait for someone else to lead you. Start chipping away yourself.
Absolutely, that's what Lancet says is true. If we want to make any changes, it's voting with your feet, voting with your actions, make your voice heard. And even though sometimes it might seem like our parliamentarians don't listen to us, the more letters you write to them, the more phone calls you make, the more they do actually listen. Things do happen. Now, of course, an issue that has just been brought to my attention that needs to be addressed, though I don't know if the speaker's going to come up about it, and that is the selling off of public housing. So if you're concerned about that, again, write to your housing minister. Now, Shane's got a couple of words to say about stenciling.
Thank you. I did briefly mention about flyers before, but I also wanted to mention stenciling. So in case you're not familiar, you simply get a bit of cardboard or material, you cut in the message into that, and then you just get spray cans and you just spray it on the ground, and you can just repeat that message like 100 times down a road, in which people can't ignore. And I don't know, we all live in different suburbs, we all have the capacity to do this kind of stuff, and we can take our voices from being affecting just the people around us in our workplace into affecting our communities and our suburbs. One street artist could reach 10,000 people in a month. That's a huge expansion of the power of your ideas. For instance, try and use humour. This gentleman over here has a humorous placard that says, "This system evolves like a Monopoly game. Eventually someone has everything, makes their own rules, and no one else wants to play anymore. Time to find a new game." That would make a great stencil. I think the average person could relate to that. I think bus stops are a great target for stenciling as well. Usually they have good clean concrete on the ground, and people are forced to sit there waiting for the bus, and they can read that shit, they can't ignore it. I highly recommend, there's a great quote from the 1960s that said, "Don't vote, organise. Don't vote, organise." I highly recommend you start organising with your friends, the kinds of people who might have these kinds of views but don't come to the rallies. They click maybe attending and they don't come out. I suggest organising with them on the weekend, maybe have a few drinks, make some stencils, and go fuck shit up. That's what I recommend.
Yep, that's the way to go. And Colleen's got a few words to say as well. One more, she said.
One more. Okay, everyone's seen me today here as a CAPS person. I have been associated with Occupy Sydney from almost the beginning, not quite. I've been here on a number of raids. I've been assaulted by police. I've been assaulted by Sydney City Council. I'm still here. Occupy Sydney is still here. Occupy Sydney helped me when I came out of the Supreme Court up there one day, bawling my eyes out. Occupy Sydney supported me in my fight against the corrupt Department of Docks. Occupy Sydney supports a lot of people and a lot of issues. It's time also for the people that are here today, and hopefully the people that didn't stay, to hang around. come in and give Occupy Sydney a hand. Help them rebuild each time after they're dismantled by the corrupt Sydney City Council. They helped me, which in turn has given me the chance to help other people. It's given me the chance to be a strong person. Let's see you all get together and help Occupy to continue on in their endeavour to bring about change to the corrupt Australian government, to bring about change for everything and to help other people. That's what Occupy Sydney is about. It's helping people, helping change. So it's time these people that have been helped by Occupy Sydney get in there and give Occupy Sydney a hand to keep going. Let's make it to another 3rd anniversary.